For C0, even with this weapon, I don't think he's that great.
Main problem is of course that Cyno is rather restrictive right now. He has a lot of individual problem and none of his team are really heavily meta.
Most of his teams feel underwhelming.
So I've heard Cyno is just not a very good character at all.
And I saved Cyno for last because he has the most prominent issues as a hyper carry currently.
Cyno as he currently is right now just feels like a character that's difficult to make work, and in most scenarios.
What happened to the great General Mahamatra Cyno? The once most sought after and hyped up unit reduced to someone who almost has no standing in the talk of the most popular units. What caused him to be put in such a negative space of thought? What caused him to be unable to make a comeback like other units before him in regards to popularity? These are the questions that people want to know, or at least something you should want to know. This video will be covering over the history of Cyno and his very high start off and debut, all the way until his eventual downfall and finishing off this very silent comeback. All points regarding Cyno in no way, shape or form are in a direct way of influencing newer players or current players to feel a certain way about Cyno, and this is basically strictly for education and entertainment purposes. Now without further ado, let's start this video regarding what happened to General Mahamatra Cyno. Cyno has, for whoever wasn't present during the initial stages of Genshin Impact's release, has one of the most exciting takeoffs a character could possibly have. This is being part of the Teyvat chapter storyline preview video. This video was posted on September 27, 2020, one day from official release. What better way to generate hype for a game than to show off these landmark characters for each region, and Cyno by far was one of the few who caught the attention of almost everyone who watched this trailer. Donning his Egyptian inspired outfit, holding a stance on top of the never before seen desert, that was something that was much different than what we were used to seeing in Liyue and Mondstadt at the release of the game, and later on adding in Inazuma. There was a lot going for Cyno from just those few seconds in the trailer, and like that, we had a large group of players save for their C6 R5 Cyno, saving every primo gem they got just to ensure that this character at this certain point was theirs. For as far as what I could find, his next appearance would be in his banner release and introduction during the 3.1 livestream, 2 years after his initial debut during the Teyvat chapter storyline preview. This was followed by his character teaser, which was released in September 22, 2022, and his character demo, which was released in September 27, 2022. Everything is pretty much coming together now. A trailer hyping up everyone about Cyno before he even was close to releasing, his stream release with one of the coolest trailers we've had today and a visually pleasing kit from the demos on the live stream, and lastly the character teaser and demo to top off basically all the avenues that we wanted to cover to make Cyno look as amazing as he already did. The world could not be more hyped for this character. The long-awaited warrior from the desert was soon to be released, but even he didn't know what storm was heading his way upon release. Not even Nahida herself could foresee the sandstorm that would push Cyno into almost obscurity. There were a multitude of things that went wrong with Cyno's release, and this had the player base scratching their heads to make any sense of it. What were those things? Well, it was basically the patch he was released in, his kit in the overworld, and the lack of support for Cyno. During the 3.1 patch, the desert was just brought into the game, which allowed for a new world boss and new materials to be grinded for Cyno's ascension. This is where the beetle incident occurred. Since Cyno has just released and his materials were not pre-farmable, everyone had to start on day one. Now there's one issue regarding the materials that he needed, which were the beetles. They were quest locked. Majority of the beetles are underground compared to the minority that are readily available on the overworld on day one. This caused thousands of players to swarm into other players' worlds hoping the beetles were still there, or if they had even unlocked the map at all for the desert. This was one point of concern that had a lot of players annoyed regarding Cyno's release. Although a minor one, it is still to be noted. Cyno's kit, although looking at it now, he becomes the driver for a good amount of Dendro related teams, and he's able to put out a respectable amount of damage with what he has currently. But put together a group of players trying to kit up their Cyno for release day and you find a lot of unfinished, unrefined builds. This leads to his burst heavy gameplay to fall very short in the overworld, coupled by his really short range dash for his skill, which boasts a hefty 7.5 second cooldown. No infusion, no follow up, just a normal short dash that only has one charge. So if you have no energy recharge or a battery alongside Cyno during these early days of his release, you could find yourself struggling to get his burst up. Also, as a side note, most players don't really use their burst in the overworld as they see it as a waste of a burst for a level 80 Hilichurl. I don't know why we keep it on us at all times even though we can get it back fast, but a lot of people don't use it, and that's a very big thing when it comes to the overworld exploration, that they don't want to use Cyno's burst, and there's kind of no other way to get his damage out as his skill doesn't really pose the best options for damage. This is why characters like Yelan, Wanderer, Ayaka, and so forth have got so much use in the overworld, because their damage can come from a quick skill, or their infusion or damage can come without burst, and it gets the job done. If you take all these factors into account, you get a lot of unsatisfied players with the watered down Cyno, not being able to comfortably use them in the overworld and struggling to get by in the abyss. Now the real nail in the coffin goes to the lack of support Cyno had at the time of his release. Cyno requires Dendro for the better part of his best teams, whether it be Aggravate or Hyperbloom. They need a constant source of Dendro, and the only characters at the time that could dispense a good amount of Dendro were Kolai and Dendro Traveler. Tighnari was an option, but he was a DPS and less of a Dendro applicator for off-field use. The big problem with both of their Dendro application is that they were both confined to a circle varying in size, and the second Cyno pushed them out of his circle or out of their circle, no more Dendro was to be applied. And for the most part, Kalai's burst would end before Cyno's would as well, not being long enough for a full DPS rotation. There was just not enough off-field Dendro applicators at the time, and good ones at that, for the amount that Cyno needed. With all of these factors being put together, we get a lot of all the factors that caused Cyno to become the shell of what he used to be or could have been. A character hyped up from the top of the totem pole, being knocked straight down upon his release. Most of this backlash and negativity was spread around the community, and the general consensus was that Cyno just wasn't worth the investment. But that would change shortly after. In version 3.2, Nahida was released, the premier Dendro support character with almost infinite Dendro application and not restricted by a space needed to be occupied. In version 3.4, Yao Yao was released and is an off-field Dendro healer. These two characters allowed Cyno to reach his full potential, either using both or one of them on the team. They both provided sufficient Dendro application and could be paired with the other two applicators from before. Nahida sharing EM buffing Cyno's damage, and Yao Yao providing healing for most comps, which Cyno was in, didn't really have a shielder in them. This finally gave Cyno what he needed to shine and show his true potential finally, which was never able to be shown during his release. Sadly, to this day, even more Dendro units are coming out, and a lot of people are getting a better understanding of Dendro and how it works, but Cyno still remains in the pool of obscurity when it comes to the choice of pulling him or not. Maybe one day this dark cloud will pass over him and everyone will realize that maybe he isn't so bad after all. If you guys like this video, I had a lot of fun making it, and if you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a sub and a like. Let me know if you like this style of the video, because I really do like the way I basically planned it in a way. If you want other characters to get the same treatment where we talk about their history before they released up until they released in their current state now, I would love to make more videos if you guys enjoyed it, or if you guys want to know something for a certain character. So other than that, thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end. See you on the next one, and peace.